Welcome, everybody. We're so happy to be here with you tonight and finally have the Marmen Quartet here with us for a performance. We've been thinking about this for a while and wanting to make it happen. So I'm happy to be joined by the entire quartet. So I have next to me Bryony, then we have Laya, and then Sinead and Johannes. And thank you all for being here and for being willing to talk about your quartet and the program that you've put together for us. And I know that you've been particularly praised for your Haydn performances, and I'd love to hear more about your relationship with Haydn and how you feel about this particular quartet.
Well, I'll start then. Haydn. Well, funnily enough, actually, when we did our first competition with the quartet, that was actually, I'm the only one in the room who was in the quartet then. That was more than a decade ago, and then we played and we won it, but then one of the jury members came up to me and said, have you played in Haydn? And I said, no. And he said, that explains it. So, I think maybe he thought we lacked a little bit of basics or something like this. And so, I think most quartets who delve into the sort of standard repertoire would say that Haydn is kind of the where you find all the essentials, the core to how to play string quartet. It's all there in Haydn, and so we've just always loved. Also, another thing is he wrote so many, and they're all so incredible. So, we had a discussion a couple of years ago, like, actually, it's not enough to play one new Haydn quartet each season, because then there's no way we'll get through all of them in our careers. So we have started learning two new Haydn quartets per season now, and let's see where we end up. But I suppose the simple answer to your question, what our relationship with Haydn is, we just love Haydn, and we think that it's there is no limit to how much you can work on Haydn, and he always surprises you, and it's just so rewarding to rehearse it and to perform it.
I would like to add the amazing thing, and you can have a look because there are some manuscripts that are waiting for you to be looked at. The amazing thing about Haydn's writing is that there is really not a lot of information in the score. If you compare it to music that was written much later, they would have added a lot of what we call secondary marking, like dynamics, hairpins, shapes, sforzandi, accents, and things like this. And Haydn doesn't write a lot of these things, so it really demands from us to be artistically switched on, and it brings you to it feels so substantial when you're working on Haydn, because you have to really dive deeper than what the surface shows you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Please do make sure that you come and check out what we have. We have a couple of orchestral works and other early editions. In fact, I remember in the notes that were prepared for this event, there were a couple of, you can see differences in phrases and how they're marked and bowings and all those things, even in the early editions. So it was never just like kind of an established tradition. So I could see how one might have to make their own decisions all the time. He says prophetically, But we've got a lot of Haydn there in plain sight for you to see. So I hope you enjoy that after. I apologize for that. The next piece on the program is special to us because the Library of Congress, I didn't personally, but the Library of Congress had a special relationship with Bela Bartók in that we commissioned the Fifth String Quartet, so we have that manuscript here. We almost commissioned the Sixth Quartet, but that didn't happen for various reasons. But then he came and gave this amazing performance with Joseph Szigeti in 1940, and so playing Kreutzer and all that.
Thanks for telling us this.
No pressure. No pressure, yeah.
But you're playing Bartók too, which is another. I mean, all of the Bartók quartets I think are amazing pieces. So.
And this was commissioned in Europe, so we can do that one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You have dibs on that one, but absolutely. Tell us about this piece, because I love this piece, and I think it's just there's so much to enjoy, even if you're not. It's kind of. It's it's what is it 1917? Or something like that. It's like it's very much kind of in that moving into modernism, but also. Very much Bartók and has that folk qualities to it. So tell me a bit about your experience with the Bartók.
I think what's really interesting about this piece is actually the structure. So 3 movements, and in a way, I think he was, well, I don't know what he was thinking, but the sort of very exciting movement, of course, is the second movement, framed by this incredibly lyrical and somewhat, there are some folk elements, but mainly lyrical in the first movement, and then this very, very serious third movement. And somehow, when one listens to it for the first time, it's shocking that you don't get to clap after the second movement because it's such a big finish. And I wonder whether this meant for him, I mean, he must have been dealing with certain things when he was writing it. But to make that choice, I think, is a really special thing with that particular quartet. But I'm sure my colleagues have more to say about Bartók.
Yeah, well, for our first album, we recorded Bartók's 4th quartet, which for me was my first real introduction to the Bartók quartets, I guess. And as Bernie said, I mean, it's quite amazing. Each quartet has quite an individual character to it. And I guess with the 4th quartet, there's 5 movements. So it's, even a longer journey somehow. But I mean, we've performed this 2nd quartet many times now, but I'm still, every time we perform it, quite shocked by how somber the ending is, and also the immense drama of the 2nd movement, and also what an emotional journey you go on from start to finish. It's a piece that always gets my heart going. Yeah, it's an amazing journey every time we do it.
Do you anticipate playing the other quartets over time, or?
There may or may not be a cycle of recordings planned over the coming years. So each season we try to learn at least 1 Bartók quartet, although I think we're sort of working towards 2, a little bit like Haydn. But it's very exciting for us to get to know all 6 slowly but surely. We've done now 2, 3, and 4. So.
Speaking of the relationship between Haydn and Bartók, actually, by the way, it's quite fascinating playing them next to each other, because if you could see it like Haydn is sort of the start of the quartet genre, and Bartók is kind of the end in a way of that. You can see. I mean, you could go through history from Haydn to Bartók and just see, step by step, the composers and the influences that they had on each other, and sort of culminating in Bartók. And then the Second World War happened, and then there was kind of like a break, which you can see quite literally, actually, in the string quartets of Ligeti. The first one being written in the confines of Soviet Union, and then when he left, he just went totally avant-garde. So what they did then was they tried to break with the quartet history or music history, and write music that wasn't influenced or a natural progression of what came before, but there was like a clean cut. So in a way, Haydn and Bartók are sort of bookending this incredible body of works for string quartet. and they actually have, if you think about it and you listen, they have more in common than you might initially think, actually.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You mean like they belong to the same sort of common practice without that break that came with the wars and
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And of course, there's other great ones, like you mentioned the Ligeti ones. Those are also paired with your Bartók 4. Is that right? In your recording, yeah, wonderful pieces. If you don't know them, go check it out. You can check out their recording. Yeah, I mean, Bartók is just the best. I really love him. But I think that everybody will enjoy. If you don't, how many people here have heard Bartók's second string quartet? Good number. Okay. For those who haven't, it is something that it's very exciting, but as there's definitely those somber elements that you'll kind of pick up on. But it's also just, to me, exquisitely beautiful, and it's lovely to hear in a live context, which we don't often hear enough of. After the intermission, you're going to be playing Cassandra Miller's Leaving, which is a little bit older piece. But have you played any of her other music, or is this the first piece of hers that you played?
Yeah, it's the first one that we've delved into, but it's a really interesting work, and it's unusual in how it's written, where it's basically there's free timing, but the first violin, cello, and viola base where we play, based on where the second violin chooses to play within the parameters of the bar. So each time we play it, it's slightly different. The notes are the same, but we may choose to play it a split second before or after the previous performance, and it's a really interesting journey. And again, it was inspired by a fiddle tune, I believe, where she basically wrote down how she perceived a colleague of hers, a fiddler, who played this tune. And I think you can really hear it. And it's quite nice pairing it with the Bartók, because you have these folk influences that come in both works. So yeah, it's a real journey also.
Those differences, the variations that you just mentioned, how significant are they in terms of how much variability is there across, say, 5 or 6 performances? Is it more just in nuance that you make the adjustments based on what you're hearing, or how do you make those decisions in the moment?
How the piece is noted, how the music is noted, is that there are bar lines, and she specifies that each bar has to last between 3 and 4 seconds, and then there are pitches, note pitches, but the notes don't have a duration, so they all look equal, but they are spaced out differently, and so it's up to the performer how much time they choose between the notes, but the framework is that one bar more or less is supposed to last 3 to 4 seconds, and so within that, there is like I think you would notice a difference if you heard us playing it twice in a row. It would probably be noticeably different. Yeah.
I think also acoustically, it can make a big difference which space we're in. We performed it last week at the Amsterdam String Quartet Biennale, which is a festival that happens every 2 years in Amsterdam, and they get, I think there were 30 quartets there maybe, and there's events from morning to evening. It's a really inspiring festival to be a part of, and we played it as part of a program called Time is How You Spend Your Love, which was a collaboration with a wonderful percussionist. We played a premiere by Samuel Carl Adams, an American composer. And this was one of the works because I guess it was a study on time and how we experience time together as musicians with our audience. But we played it in a way where we sat in the center and the audience surrounded us. And for the Cassandra Miller, we were spread out, so we were quite far away from each other. So I feel like that also would affect very much how we play it. And this will be our first performance after that. So I think it will be interesting for us to see how coming back together, that will affect it tonight. Yeah.
Thank you for that. No, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think you're going to enjoy the piece. The variability, like you probably wouldn't perceive it on the first one because this is the version that you're going to hear. But it is an interesting thing to consider how musicians interact over time and how they make the types of decisions that they do. So thank you for sharing that. The final work in the program is the Debussy Quartet. So not ending a bit with a whimper, but no, I'm just joking. But yeah, so this quartet is another great quartet. I mean, let's talk about it. What do you enjoy about this one, playing wise?
Well, playing wise, I mean, we have been playing this and the Ravel. They are normally a pair on CDs and things like that. And from the period, they are two representative works of its time, and Debussy. So sort of usually one compares them a little bit. I think that we compare them to each other, and what I personally actually think is kind of the genius behind this piece is that it sounds. If you think about the time when it was written, it sounds completely new. Like it has so many, it breaks so many rules, compared to the sort of more German, the music that was written with these German rules in mind, of counterpoint and structure and so on. How that music sounds to the ear. This is such a contrast to that. It sounds completely different. You have things like parallel motion in and you have chords that don't resolve. They're just beautiful chords with lots of colored notes, like you call them, but they don't resolve like they would have in Brahms or something like that, or late romantic music. But Debussy, he hides. There are structural devices and even harmonic structural devices in this piece that are totally within the rule book, but he kind of hides them behind this new sound. So I think for the listener, even today, but particularly back then, on a subconscious level, you still experience some kind of familiarity, like the narrative it unfolds in a pretty recognizable way, and you can really follow. Yeah, you can follow the development of the piece, but at the same time, it sounds like something you've never heard before. And this, I think, is really the genius behind this piece in particular. I think it's in a way it's like the only piece in the string quartet repertoire that's like that from this period. So that's really exciting, and it's really fun as well to like find these like moments in particular. For example, that it might have just hidden like a completely normal, perfect cadence at a very important structural place in the movement, but it's sort of it's kind of obscured by all the beautiful notes around it and everything, and so that's a really fun thing for us as interpreters to then realize. Okay, so that's actually a very important moment in terms of the structure. We don't want to show that too much, but we want to know it and feel that significance ourselves, and that contextualizes how we treat all those incredible sounding colors and notes around it. So yeah.
Can I add or expand on that a little bit? Just because I think what you say is I completely agree with everything, but what is so amazing about this work is that he used this idée fixe as a way of unifying the movements. So each opening theme of the movement, it comes from the same DNA of the notes. And so even though each movement is wildly different, this common thread throughout is what allows you as a listener to feel this journey and metamorphosis throughout. And this is also really fun, as well as looking for the cadences and the sort of traditional side of the music, to really figure out exactly how he is manipulating this DNA, which is just, it's so fascinating. And I think that's what makes it such a successful piece. Even though the language is very new, the idée fixe is something for all of us as players and as listeners to hold on to as this kind of thing to enjoy throughout.
That's a really good point. Also just about that idea of having this recurring idea that can be manipulated is something that was definitely in the air with people like Franck and so forth. So that side of the German French, like the people who were moving away from the German sort of model. But I mean, it was a fairly early piece in his career, so it kind of makes sense that he was still, kind of influenced in that way. And of course, Franck is known for his metamorphoses of transformations of themes and things like that. So that's a really good point. I mean, it's also just a beautiful piece for the listeners. It looks like it's fun to play. I imagine it is. I'm not a string player, but am I correct in that?
It's so much fun. It's really incredible. And just having this contrast, I mean, there's so much cheekiness, for instance, in the second movement. And then the third movement, for me, is one of the most beautiful slow movements in the world. And we use wooden mutes in the third movement as opposed to rubber mutes. For us, it just creates this magical sound color, and we can really push the limits of how far we can go. I think it's just always such a joy to discover what new colors we can create and just have fun with each other. I guess it's really such a joy to play this one.
Well, thank you for that. I guess the next question I have is just about what your immediate plans are. Do you get to take a week off starting tomorrow, or do you have to hit the road again? And what's next for the Marmen Quartet?
Well, tomorrow we play at Princeton University, and then we'll spend a couple of days rehearsing in New York City and also working with a mentor of ours, Mark Steinberg from the Brentano Quartet. And then we'll play at Capital Region Classical in Schenectady. Before, I don't know if I said that correctly, but oh yeah, great. We've had many discussions about how to pronounce it. And then next week, we are playing in Germany, and we're playing kind of a marathon concert in Bad Tölz, where we'll play with the ex-violist of the Casals Quartet, also a mentor of ours, Jonathan Brown, and a wonderful Colombian cellist, Santiago Cañón Valencia. So it's nice. We have lots of collaborative projects coming up, as well as quartet projects, which is a lot of fun.
And looking a little more into the future, we will record our third disc, which is actually of 3 Haydn quartets, including this one. So keep an eye out for that.
And looking into the past, we have recorded the Debussy and the Ravel string quartet with a piece by Takemitsu, which has not yet been released.
These things take time, I know. That's one of those things that's frustrating.
If I can be very cheeky, one more note. Looking further back, but also looking to the present, our first disc, which is recordings of Bartók and both Ligeti quartets, we've just been nominated for a BBC Music Award, their Chamber Award, and it's audience voting. So if any of you would like to go online and vote for us and spread the word, we would be very grateful.
You can have multiple computers, like when you're trying to get tickets for.
we need your help. It's really just, it's up to popularity now, so.
Well, I mean, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about anything?
Not really, just that we're very happy to be here. We haven't played in Washington, D.C. before, so this is our debut here as the quartet. Yeah.
Actually, if I can just share a very short story with you. I lived in the US for 3 years. I did my master's at Juilliard. And when I was there, I studied historical performance as well as modern viola. But one of the only times that I came to Washington, D.C. was to play in a historical performance project where I went with my my classical string quartets on gut strings and A equals 430, and we played some concerts at the Smithsonian Museum, and they were really special concerts at the time. But I was saying to my colleagues earlier, it feels very special to be back here, just over a decade later, with my now wonderful quartets playing here in Washington, D.C. and sharing this amazing music with you. So thanks for having us.
We're thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much. I guess, you know what, we could take a couple of questions since we have them. If you don't mind, Jay will bring a microphone to you if you're open.
This is kind of carry over from theater. The beginning of a theater project is often what they call table talk, where the actors sit around the table and they begin reading the play with each other. What is the equivalent? How do you approach a new piece? How do you go about those early decisions about pace and all the rest?
Actually, that sounds like a really good idea. I think we should do that. Yeah, I think we should just sit down with the score and just talk it through. But usually, what we do is that we come somewhat prepared, and we play through the piece and make some decisions about maybe some bowings need to be put in, or just some basic decisions so that we can all practice it to a sort of to more or less a performance ready stage, and then we meet again a few weeks later usually, and so that would be our sort of table read equivalent, I suppose. Yeah.
Hello. I get the impression that you're not going to be playing the Stradivari violins, and I was wondering how you thought of the instruments, comparing one with another, and how you decide to make your choices.
Do you mean about if they were, like, for their own instruments, or? Because they're not going to be doing them tonight, unfortunately. We didn't have enough. We would love to have them play on the Stradivari instruments, but we want to have enough time for everybody to be able to get used to them, feel comfortable with them, and so that everybody feels good about it in the end. Just because it's a hard adjustment to make. If we just threw them into their hands and expected them to go, it would be a difficult thing, I think. But
so it's partly a matter of time to practice.
That's one of the things, yeah. That's one of the criteria for sure. That's the main one, actually, with tours. It's hard with the touring groups to have the time in your schedule, because time, increases costs and all that sort of a thing. So
That's not to say we wouldn't love to do that at some point in the future.
it's good to know. So anyway, I think there might be time for one or two more.
Hi, I'm fascinated by your description of the Cassandra Miller piece and the lack of time specifications in the piece. As a group, how do you deal with that? Do you, before each concert, have to go through this bar by bar and decide how long each note should last, or how do you have a come do this so you're all on the same wavelength when you actually play the concert?
Pretty much the opposite. Yeah, it's not really a piece that we. It's not in the nature of the piece somehow to be clearly defined how it should go. So it feels very unnatural to make sort of decisions about time when the essence of the piece asks you to be flexible and not, you know, in that framework of 3 to 4 seconds per bar. But obviously, when we rehearse, and I think that goes with any repertoire, including when we learn a new piece, I think at the base of, I don't like to say coming up with an interpretation, but at the base of an interpretation, in my opinion, is that we study a piece together and that we understand the piece together. What is the essence of it? What are the structural sections, harmonic language, all these things, and then be led by that as to form our interpretation. And I think similar with the piece by Cassandra Miller, of course, when we rehearsed, we have at some point put on a metronome at 60 beats per minute and see how it actually would feel roughly to have that strict time frame, but it's pretty unrealistic to recreate that we feel even a second exactly the same way between the four of us. So yeah, and I think one more thing in that piece is also one of her instructions is that the second violin has that sort of leading voice or sort of the the busiest part sort of is in the second violin, and the other voices react to that. And so I think in the end we need to be connected through our ears and through our feelings and things like this, and react in the moment. Only then it's really music making in the end. If we are in the moment and not predefined too much, I think.
I would say that probably goes for our approach to music making in general. In the rehearsal, we try lots of options, but in the end, in the performance, we're in the moment and creating things there and then. Yeah, so anything could happen.
And you could say like with Miller, you know, like you were talking about earlier, Haydn with Haydn. Sorry, I called you Haydn.
You're touching the manuscript.
Exactly,
everything
is. Well, like you were saying about Haydn earlier, that he doesn't give us a lot of information when it comes to dynamics and phrasing and expressive. There are no expressive markings really. Like, I mean, sometimes, but very limited expressive markings. So that's a parameter that's very free in Haydn's music, and in Cassandra Miller's music, there is the parameter that's free is the durations of the notes. So it's just a different. It's just a different fabric, sort of. It's a different fabric of music, and the parameters that are sort of expected by the composer to be spontaneous and fluid are sort of undetermined. And in the Cassandra Miller, it's the durations, and in the Haydn, it's the dynamics, for example. So yeah.
Those are very good points. I think we have time for one last question. I think there was one.
Well, I was going to ask. Yeah,
sure, we could do.
Thank you. There are several portrayals of string quartets in films and novels, and I wondered if any of you ever thought any of those were convincing in any way.
I've never seen any.
You haven't seen any, okay.
I remember watching the late quartets quite a few years ago now, so I don't remember the specifics. Although I do remember there being a lot more relationship drama than I would ever imagine our quartet having. But I mean, it's interesting. You know, in a quartet, you are really in a four-way marriage. Love it or hate it. And so, of course, I think that what these films try to capture is the very complicated layering that is a relationship between four people. And also, I think the amazing thing is that every single quartet in the world is slightly different. So I would say that some of these films all have elements of the truth in real quartets, but I'm not sure any of them are exactly like our quartet.
Looking forward to that upcoming documentary about the Emerson Quartet, by the way. There is one coming, I think. Yeah, that should be fun.
You know, they actually have actors who specialize in recreating musical performance who are not musicians themselves. So it's very interesting to watch them and see what they believe is what a musician should be doing or would be doing at that point. And so it's always one of those things where I think you sometimes look for who's the real musician there, like, and see who's the one leading. And so that's kind of a fun thing you could do too with that.
Which reminds me, actually, in the late quartets, Nina Lee does actually get to make her sort of film debut when she comes on at the end in the film as the cellist that is replacing her. I probably just, sorry, spoiler alert. But it's really amazing actually to see her in the film, like on the stage with all of these incredibly famous actors and actually playing her instrument surrounded by actors who are trying to play the instruments.
Well, listen, we're going to let them go back and kind of get ready for the concert, you know, since that's happening in just a little bit. But please join me in welcoming or thanking the Marmen Quartet for returning.